So good morning. Today we are going to talk about Eights On Pylons, as you know from reading your homework assignment that you did read. Yes. All right, sweet. So here in CFI, this is how we do Eights On Pylons, so something to look forward to in a couple months for you. And so as we want to pull out your ground lesson there, the objective of this class is for you, the student, to develop an understanding of Eights On Pylons and explain the maneuver upon completion of the lesson. So I'm going to run through the maneuver and just how it's flowing, the different pieces of it, and then you can ask any questions during the time I'm explaining. Feel free to just pipe up and ask about something. There's no shame. And then when I'm done, we'll have you come up and you can explain the maneuver, just through it, everything about it, to the best of your ability, and I'll ask you any questions on that. So, all right. So why do we teach Eights On Pylons? Yeah, I'm excited to teach it because it's actually, I think it's one of the most fun maneuvers in commercial, and it has practical application. If you're anything like me, I like to have a purpose for why I'm flying something. I can learn a lot better with a purpose. So why do we do it? It refines skills. It teaches us, let's just read the purpose I have here written on the maneuver description. Pull that out too. We're going to be looking through that the whole time. So, to refine the pilot's ability to control the aircraft at traffic pattern altitudes over a varied ground track while dividing attention between instrument indications and visual cues outside the aircraft, and also to teach, develop, and test subconscious control of the aircraft. So, pretty much it just refines your ability to fly while concentrating on other things, which is something we're really trying to do in commercial. Yeah, refined skills necessary for the commercial certificate. Obviously, we're going to be testing on that on the practical, and then 2 real life scenarios: aerial photography and search and rescue. So there's just a picture of a downed plane. So whoever's taking that picture is obviously either in a helicopter or in an airplane. And if they're in an airplane, they're most likely circling. And to be able to circle something like that without getting the wing in the way, if there was any wind, you would have to do something like what you do in an Eights On Pylons maneuver, and also you'd want to be able to do that while maintaining control of the aircraft safely. So there's just some practical applications. What does it look like? This is just the picture that you saw in your textbook. Pretty much you're just flying the figure 8 pattern like that around 2 pylons. There's the one pylon, the other pylon, so crossing the road in a T. You can see the shadow there on the ground is the kind of the 8 that it puts on the ground. And as you can tell, there's not a constant radius like you had in turns around a point in S-turns in private. So that's one thing you don't want to get confused with Eights On Pylons, is that you're definitely not doing the constant radius with the varied banks. That's not the purpose, as we'll explain in a bit here. So you can see the wind coming in there. You enter downwind and you fly the 8 pattern. And there's a couple things you got to think about. So we'll just walk through the maneuver here. If you got the maneuver description pulled out, yeah, we'll just walk through the whole thing and explain the different parts of it as we go along, and just ask any questions if stuff's not making sense. So this is a picture of the north practice area. Deer Park's over here somewhere. It's a little bit north and west of Deer Park. I think it's the best place to do Eights On Pylons just because of how you have great roads crossing everywhere, a lot of good fields for your emergency landing spots. Just a nice place to do air work. So, maneuver description. Right, so just starting the maneuver, the first thing we got to do is figure out where the wind's coming from, because the wind is going to determine how we look for our pylons, because we want to enter the maneuver downwind, just like we did in the S-turns in private. So to do a wind circle, if you remember from your private maneuvers, at what altitude do we want to do a wind circle for a maneuver?
At the altitude you're going to fly at.
Yes, the altitude we're going to fly at. So we need to know kind of a rough estimate of the altitude we fly the maneuver at. So for that we have to know, right, so the altitude we fly Eights On Pylons at is called pivotal altitude, which we'll explain here in a second. I guess we just explain right now. Ground speed squared divided by 11.3. That's the formula for pivotal altitude, and you have that written on your maneuver description there as well. And so for your homework assignment, we're going to actually do a little card like this with different pivotal altitudes written on it for different ground speeds. So I just have 90 through 150 knots, just whatever really kind of makes sense, because you're going to be slower ground speed with different winds, and the maneuver is done at cruise in the 182 or slightly less if you don't want to do it that fast. So just make a card like this with the ground speed, and then calculate the square divided by 11.3, put the pivotal altitude down. So we don't know what exact pivotal altitude we're going to be at yet, and we'll explain that more in a second, but we don't know what exact altitude it is because we don't know exactly where the winds are coming from and how strong they are, so we can't get the right number, but we can just take a general one. So say just like 120 knots is about 1,300 feet, so just descend to about 1,300 and configure for the maneuver, or you could just do the wind circle, whatever configuration you're in is fine. So descend, just do your wind circle. We don't have to go into that because you already know how to do those. When you figured out where the wind's coming from, then we can start looking for the pylons, and we know that we're going to enter downwind. So say we figured out that the winds are coming from the west, north up, and so we want to look for pylons that are on a line that's perpendicular to the wind, as you saw in this right here. So wind's coming from straight ahead here, pylons are perpendicular. So yeah, say the winds are coming from the west again, and so then we want to find pylons that are perpendicular along some sort of visible road. And what I like to do is have at least one of the pylons on an X of roads, so that you can fly, when you're going to fly upwind to enter the maneuver like you did with S-turns or something, then you don't lose your pylons because you're flying up a road, you turn around, you're on that road and come back down without forgetting where your pylons were, because I had that issue a lot. So anytime I really pick pylons that aren't on a nice X road, I usually lose them. So a couple things to think about when you're picking the pylons. It's really easy to see. So I'll show you in a second. This is the one pylon that I've picked, and then the other one is this farm right here. So you want something that's really easy to see, that's perpendicular to the wind, obviously. It's nice to have them along the X of the road. You want them to be free of obstructions, terrain. You don't want to do them right over a town or something, obviously. So like you wouldn't want to have like a hill or something here, and then it'd be clear down here, because it's going to really mess with, you could get bad turbulence off of it, and you could get unsafe with how low you are to terrain. It would be a bad situation. So make sure you're in a clear area like this with a lot of fields, because you're going to be wanting to pick a emergency landing spot somewhere near your pylons within gliding distance. Kind of the same thing as the other maneuvers you did in private as well. So okay, so these are the two pylons I picked. They're perpendicular to the wind along this road. The one is really easy to see here with the crossing of the road, so I'll be flying up this one to make sure I know where they are. And then this is the second one. You want your pylons approximately 3/4 mile apart, and it's in our practice areas, a field is about a half mile square, so half mile from there to there. This is a 1 mile by half mile, but in the Northwest you got pretty much half mile fields, unless you got the circle field, so don't do anything, don't paddle around circles. Right, so the nice thing about this as well is that you can move your pylon a little bit, your second pylon, whichever one you do. You want to just always go into the first one the same direction, so either go into the right one all the time or go into the left one all the time. Don't switch it up all the time. So you have this one here, it's really easy to see, and then I have this here, and I can move, like you can move this one closer, or you can move it a little bit further. You can move it all the way up there if you wanted to, but it's nice to be able to move it to different places if on your second turn it doesn't work out the exact way you're thinking. So easy to see, clear, a nice emergency landing area beside it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it with picking pylons. Any questions on how to pick them? In my opinion, it's pretty much the hardest point of the maneuver, and after that, you're going to be good. So that's the upside of 8-ton pylons. But any questions on how to pick them?
Your first pylon, you said, is that whole farm area. Is it a specific part of that, or is it just the group of buildings and trees?
The specific. I just usually pick groups. It'd just be the center of the group. I mean, you can say it's a certain building in the center of the group if you'd like to make it more specific, but I think this is kind of a high up. I think it's a lot higher shot than it would actually be too. So, I mean, you could just pick a little driveway or something off of the group, but just the center of something really visible. So no questions on picking them then?
Are you able to, sorry.
What's up, man?
If you're flying parallel to that road at that distance, are you able to see it if it's on the right side of your airplane?
If you're flying.
As you're approaching your pylons?
Say that again?
You use that road to kind of keep orientation.
Yeah.
As you're approaching your pylons, are you able to see that road from the left side of the airplane if it's on the right, or is that not an issue?
That wouldn't be an issue for me because you got it extending all the way in front of you, so you know. I mean, it's just giving yourself a baseline for how to see stuff.
It's not set.
That's one of my biggest things is not finding them when I turn around. Yeah, it's not a giving specific thing. It's just helping you baseline you on the right, because that's going to be the second pylon. That's going to be the first pylon for this discussion. Okay. And so you're actually going to be flying in the middle here, so you should be able to see it, I would think, if you lean over. Right, so we got our pylons picked. We know where the one's coming from. We'll say it's from the west here. And then we're going to make sure we're in our configuration, if we haven't already. So configuration for this is cruising 182, so 22 squared, or you can do a little bit less if you want. And then just adjust your pivotal altitude for your ground speed coming in downwind. So yeah, 22 squared, say, for this discussion. So 2200 RPM, 22 inches of manifold pressure, and then lean out your mixture for cruise if you use the EZT setting, whatever procedure you're using for that. I like to use EZT if you've already got that in your mind. So, and flaps up, gear up, cruise configuration. So configure that as you're coming around and you've picked them, and then clear in your turn upwind, and then you want to fly upwind long enough so that you don't, you aren't rushing yourself as you're coming into the maneuver, which you already know from private as well. Because especially now in commercial where we're trying to be efficient, it's not going to look good if you turn around too early and have to go all the way back around again. So to be efficient, we clear while we're turning upwind. We fly upwind for a long enough time so that we aren't going to rush ourselves. And then we'll turn back around downwind and clear in that turn. So now clearing is totally done. You can see the whole area you're going to be doing the maneuver in. And then as you're flying down, you want to position yourself a little bit to the right here. So I start my Eights On Pylons to the left. So I position myself a little bit to the right of center so that as I'm coming along, I can set up my angle, which is going to be 20 degrees between perpendicular and towards the first pylon. So 20 degrees like that is how I enter it. So position yourself a little bit to the right here so that you can fly right in the middle in between the pylons at that 20-degree angle. And then after you set up that angle, just hit the heading select on the Aspen and center your heading bug up on the entry heading, because that's the heading you're going to be entering on and exiting on. And you'll just keep the heading bug there during the maneuver. So, alright, so now I'm going to transition and we'll just call these two the pylons. So, left pylon for from your point of view, right pylon here. So this one will be the middle of that group of buildings right there, so the driveway or whatever, and then the other one here is going to be the X in the road. So we have cleared, we configured, and we're coming in a little bit to the right of the center of the pylons here, and then 20 degrees towards the left pylon. And we're flying down. We've been clearing the whole time, and now we're going to roll in towards the first pylon once we're a beam. Just back it up a second here. The altitude you want to be at coming into the maneuver is pivotal altitude, remember, which is the ground speed squared by 11.3. So once you've configured and you're set up, you want to check your ground speed one more time when you're straight downwind before you enter that turn to see what exact pivotal altitude you are. So just check your ground speed, check your card, and then go a little bit below the actual straight downwind ground speed, Why? Because you're going to be canted that 20 degrees, right? So the wind's not going to be exactly straight on your tail. So your ground speed's actually going to get a little bit lower than what it is when you're coming in straight downwind. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a little bit below the pivotal altitude, say 100 feet. So if our ground speed was 130, that'd be 1,500 feet AGL. So we'd want to go at about 1,400, something like that, as we're coming in. All right, so clear configured, coming in 20-degree angle here, canted toward the first pylon. And as we get in between the pylons, we're going to bank in to our first pylon as we're just right abeam off the left wing. And we're banking in to put the line of sight reference, which is the other new thing we're talking about here in Eights On Pylons, onto the first pylon. So the line of sight reference is just banking in, and it's putting the, it's along the lateral axis. So with the wings, lateral axis, and eye level below the wing. So this is going to be where your eyes are looking. So as we come in here, 20 degrees in between them, we bank in. So say, there's eye level right there. So it's just a little bit below the wing. So you'll bank in like that when you're abeam, and you'll put that line of sight reference right on your pylon. And you'll start coming around the turn. And really the bank angle, according to PTS, is 30 to 40 degrees max, so that's one of the things that's actually measured in this maneuver. There's not a lot of, plus or minus 10 knots, plus or minus, 5 degrees of heading in and out. That stuff's not actually in the PTS. We just do that to keep things specific. So you'll just bank in when you're abeam like that onto the first pylon, and you'll put that reference point on the pylon, and we'll start pivoting around it. So that makes sense with the line of sight references then? Got another little slide up there, it's kind of the same thing. So if you were pivoting around like that, it's right where your eye is there coming down to the pylon while you're in the bank. Alright, so clear configured, again at 20 degrees. When you're abeam it, we bank in and we start coming around like this. And throughout the entire maneuver, we're going to be, you want to come up with some sort of thing that helps you just helps you think through the different things you want to be doing while you're pivoting around the pylons. So for me, I use clear, coordination, and point. So I look out the windshield, clear for airplanes, scan my instruments, check coordination. The entire time we need to be really good on coordination because it'll create illusions with the line of sight reference. So say you got too much right rudder in, right? So you come in and you're like that. It looks like your line of sight reference isn't on the pylon. You have to change something when in fact you're just you're not coordinated. So that's one of the things in the BTS that you're going to be graded on. So just come up with some mental procedure, acronym or whatever that helps you organize thought through the maneuver so that you can keep track of things. Because the whole dividing attention inside and outside is a big thing with the maneuver, and it's really easy to start just focusing on your pylon and just kind of just flying around it, and you totally forget to clear through the maneuver, you forget to check coordination, you think you got it, but you don't. So, right, so we bank in, we start coming around, and if there's wind, which we said there was, as you start coming around like this into your first 90-degree point there, you know that you're going to be getting a headwind soon. So with a headwind, obviously your ground speed's going to decrease, right? So what's that going to do to pivotal altitude?
Decrease.
Alright, so as ground speed decreases, pivotal altitude decreases, ground speed increases, pivotal altitude increases. It's a really nice relationship. And so we know that our first control movement with elevator is going to be what as we come around into the headwind?
Down.
Down! Nice. Yeah, so we come around and we know it's going to be pitched down to be able to keep that line of sight reference on, because if we don't pitch down, it's going to start moving behind, like the reference point that we're looking at is going to start moving behind the pylon. It's going to look like it is. Or the way I like to think about it is that the pylon moves in front of the line of sight reference, which really works for me. If it doesn't work for you, you can think about it the other way. But you probably have to wait until we're in the airplane to actually figure out which way works best for you. So what's nice about thinking about the pylon moving forward rather than the line of sight back is that as the pylon moves forward, the yoke moves forward, you pitch down. Pylon moves back, the yoke moves back, you pitch up. So it's just a direct correlation there, which really helps with just subconsciously keeping it on the pylon. Kind of makes a lot of sense. Does that make sense to you? Or?
Yeah, it's easy.
Nice. So yeah, we come around, we're getting the headwind, we're going to start pitching down. If we don't, say we don't pitch down enough, it starts moving back like that, pylon moves forward. It just reminds you the yoke moves forward. Clear, coordination, point, you see it coming around. You come around the circle again like that. You're going to start getting that crosswind. Ground speed is going to start to increase again. So pivot altitude has to do what? Increase. Yes. So we pull back on the yoke, and don't do it really drastically because it's really just a small amount that's going to correct the picture with your eyes out the window there. So then we're coming around. We've got our first pylon done, and we're going to roll out on about that 20 degrees canted towards the second pylon. So not on your heading bug, but 20 degrees the other direction. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's pretty much it as far as coming around the pylon. And it's just going to be the same thing with this one. So we come around and we roll out on that 20 degrees towards the other pylon in reference to perpendicular. Leave the heading bug where it is because we're going to roll out on that at the end of the maneuver. And then another big thing that PTS there is that we're going to want to be wings level, straight level flight for about 3 to 5 seconds. The 3 to 5 seconds isn't in the PTS. It's just says wings level between the pylons. So it's not a huge deal, but it's kind of what we're shooting for. And that's determined by how far your pylons are apart. If they're really far apart, then you're going to have a lot longer straight leg in between them. But you don't want them too far apart. You know why?
Because otherwise you are going to have to scoot over to get it onto that pylon, right?
So say the pylons are that close together, say it's a quarter mile, and we come in between the pylons here. What's our bank angle look like on the first pylon? I mean, that's like 85 degrees. So we got 30 to 40 degrees. So that's why we need our pylons to be the right place. If they're super far apart, you come in the middle. Your bank angle, what's that, like 20? Mm-hmm. So we need them to be the right distance, not only for the straight and level flight portion, but so that the bank angle is correct when we come in. So, right, so in between the pylons, 20 degrees canted the other direction. You fly your straight and level flight there, and you're going to bank into the next pylon. Where do you think you're going to bank in? Here.
When it's a beam?
Yeah, so a beam the right wing. You're looking out the right wing, you see the next pylon come in a beam, and look what happens if you roll in too early. What does that look like to you?
Now you got to dive to get it.
Yeah, it looks like you got to dive down to the pylon, but it's just an illusion because you just rolled in too early, and everything would have been great if you just waited a couple seconds and rolled in. So a beam the right wing, roll in, put that line of sight reference on it again, and then it's just the same thing. Clear, coordination, point. Once again, it's going to be pitched down as you go into the headwind, and yeah, it's really just the same coming around the second pylon. So you just come around that, and then you're just going to roll out on your heading bug. So clear, coordination, point in the coordination where you scan your instruments. You can see your heading bug coming around, or pick something outside before the maneuver if that works for you too. And you're just going to roll out on your heading bug, exit the maneuver at that 20 degree point, and then just run your checklist. Do the, check all 7 or whatever works for you, light a checklist, whatever you come up with that really you can use for every maneuver to just check your configuration when you're done.